Yes. A really controversial topic that makes us rethink regulatory compliance, business value, and social responsibility. However, there's a saying, solutions always outnumber challenges. Just look at our virtual platform. There are 300 plus technology solutions, and around 11% of them are related to green technology. Such a good news. All right, over the years, HKSTP has been bringing disruptive solutions from around the world to corporates to stay ahead of the curve. To drive corporate innovation, HKSTP has partnered with many leading corporates in different verticals to co-create solutions to overcome specific pain points since 2017, with almost 30 accelerators and programs. We envisage to gather leaders, influence leaders, and have leaders influence leaders. Innovation Movers is HKSTP's first ever initiative to recognize Hong Kong corporates for encouraging innovation adoption. More than 10 judging panelists were invited from the INT ecosystem to review the successful stories from 2018 to 2021 submitted by leading corporates. Today, we're delighted to present the recognition to 13 outstanding corporate pioneers. Before we start the appreciation presentation, it is our honor to invite Mr. Alfred Sit Wing Hung, JP, Secretary for Innovation and Technology, the Government of Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, to say a few words.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy to join you all today at the Corporate Innovation Summit. To begin, I would like to congratulate all winners of Innovation Movers and to thank the participating enterprises' efforts in supporting Hong Kong's innovation ecosystem. Hong Kong is at a golden opportunity to develop INT. This term of government places INT high on our policy agenda and has invested over 110 billion Hong Kong dollars in the past few years to drive INT development along the 8 major areas. We are also actively participating in the GBA development, which is the best entry point for Hong Kong to better integrate into the overall development of our country. And it will bring continuous impetus to Hong Kong's development, particularly on the INT front. I hope the success stories of the innovation movers will set an example. I look forward to seeing many more success stories to come, shaping Hong Kong as one of the front runners in the global INT race. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy today's summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sit. We're very grateful to receive the tremendous support over the years from the Hong Kong SAR government, which plays an integral part in this robust innovation ecosystem. And now, may I invite Mr. Eugene Shah, Chief Corporate Development Officer of Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation, to present the Innovation Movers recognition in 3 categories, namely Technology Pioneer, Business Transformer, and Ecosystem Builder. Eugene, please. Okay, to begin with, the appreciation to the Innovation Movers, Technology Pioneer goes to the following in alphabetical order. First, we have Airport Authority Hong Kong. May I have Ms. Sherilyn Ng, Assistant Manager, IT Planning and Innovation. Let's take a photo together. Congratulations. Excellent. Next, we have DBS Bank Hong Kong Limited. May I have Mr. Trevor Cheung, Managing Director, Digital and Innovation, Institutional Banking Group, and Ms. Chloe Chu, Senior Vice President, Innovation Management, Institutional Banking Group. Congratulations. And next we have Jardine Restaurant Group. May I have Mr. Andrew Wong, Chief Executive, to the stage, please. Let's take a photo. Fantastic. Gentlemen, please remain on stage as we're going to invite back Airport Authority Hong Kong and DBS Bank Hong Kong Limited for a group photo. All right, looking great, everyone. Okay, let's take a look at our main photographer in the center there. And big hands to our Innovation Movers Technology Pioneer. Thank you very much. Eugene, please remain on stage. Coming up, Innovation Movers Business Transformer, and they are Hang Seng Bank. May I have Mr. Stephen Leung, Head of IT, Wealth and Personal Banking. Congratulations. Next, we have HKBN Enterprise Solutions. May I have Mr. John Liu, Associate Director, IoT. Fantastic. Next, we have Hyson Development Co. Limited. May I have Mr. Ravel Lai, General Manager of Business Technology. Beautiful. Okay. Next, we have LH Group Limited. May I have Professor Simon Wong, Chairman and CEO. Congratulations. And next, we have Watami International Co. Limited. May I have Mr. Matthew Chung, Managing Director. Looking great. Now, gentlemen, please remain on stage as we are going to invite back Hang Seng Bank, HKBN Enterprise Solutions, Hyson Development Co. Limited, LH Group Limited, and Watami International Co. Limited for a group photo. Okay. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time for Innovation Movers Business Transformer. All right, last but not least, Innovation Movers Ecosystem Builder, and they are Cathay Pacific Airways Limited. May I have Mr. Lawrence Fong, Group General Manager, IT and Digital. Congratulations. Next, we have China Cham Group. May I have Mr. Damien Wu, Director of Digital Transformation. Congratulations. Next, we have Ingram Micro China Limited. May I have Ms. Biga Look, Manager, Director, Hong Kong and Macau, and Ms. Joey Low, Senior General Manager, to the stage, please. Looking great. And congratulations. Next, we have SCORE. May I have Mr. Tony Ho, Head of South Asia, SCORE Global Life. Excellent, congratulations. Next, we have the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Limited. May I have Ms. Christine Ong, Head of Business Banking Hong Kong, and Mr. Richard Lord, Chief Information Officer, Wholesale Asia Pacific. Let's take a photo. And please remain on stage. Please remain on stage as we are going to invite back Cathay Pacific Airways Limited, China Cham Group, Ingram Micro China Limited, SCORE, and Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Limited for a group photo. Okay. Looking great. And try to smile with your eyes. Fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. Innovation Movers, Ecosystem Builder. Thank you very much, and thank you, Eugene. Thank you. Once again, congratulations to all the innovation movers. The innovation journey still goes on. It is our belief here at HKSTP to connect these leading corporates to influence each other through the recognition and making Hong Kong one of Asia's major innovation hubs. For more than 60 years, the renowned ESA Business School, University of Navarra in Spain, has been at the forefront of management education and leadership development. ESA's executive education programs have been ranked the best in the world by the Financial Times for a record-breaking 6th consecutive year. HKSTP is pleased to join hands with ESA to conduct a sophisticated research in corporate innovation. And now it is our utmost pleasure to have Mr. Jose Maria Ciota, Executive Director, ESA Business School, to unveil the paper findings for us online from Barcelona. Jose Maria, over to you.
Hi. What's the difference between the gentleman and the lady in the cover of the presentation? Stay with me for a few seconds and you will discover the what. My name is Jose Maria Ciota, and jointly with Professor Julia Pratt of ESA Business School, we are going to share with you the results of the study on app innovation. For this, I would love to start with this example, and please don't get sick with the driving of the car. This is just one example of the startup Pony AI based on artificial intelligence on how they are supporting the automobile sector, enabling self-driving, and in this case in one of the cities in China. And this is just one example of what we are going to discuss today on how corporate giants are innovating with deep tech entrepreneurs in the regions of East and Southeast Asia. But what's deep tech? What's corporate venturing? Deep tech are those emerging technologies based on scientific discoveries that try to tackle some of the world's fundamental challenges. They are changing over time. They have some science behind, and they are somehow connected with sustainability and social impact. Right now, although these categories may change over time, the main categories are artificial intelligence, advanced materials, biotech, blockchain, robotics, photonics, and quantum computing. And now, what's corporate venturing? This is any collaboration, as we were describing in a recent article at Harvard Business Review, any collaboration between an established company and an innovative startup to adopt innovation. What are the consequences of this definition? Number one, this is for established companies, and therefore this is not only for corporate giants, but any small and medium enterprise. Second, this is any collaboration with startups, although we may relate mainly with corporate venture capital. This phenomenon is much richer from, as you can see in the chart, startup acquisitions, corporate venture capital, corporate incubators, accelerators, or even more recent mechanisms such as the venture client, where the corporation is the first client of the startup. And this phenomenon is getting a higher relevance in Asia, especially in the past years, as we can see in this chart, where, as you can see in the right bar, the percentage of Asia has increased in this proxy, which is the corporate venture capital investments, one of the mechanisms in the region. And this is the perfect ground for the trigger the discussion of today, which are: one, what's the current picture of corporate venturing in deep tech in this amazing region of East and Southeast Asia? Number two, what keeps all of you Chief Innovation Officers and related roles on innovation, what keeps you up at night? And number three, how to tackle those challenges with innovation architecture, precisely with three main themes that we'll see are some of the groups that have these challenges that we have described before. Innovation governance, number one, cultural hierarchy, and lastly, risk perception. Let's start with section number one, the current picture. First of all, I would have for this to thank you for all the interviewees that has provided personal insights and expertise in this study. For this, we have used for this study two main samples. Number one more generic or overview in which we have analyzed corporate giants, top 20 on annual revenue per region in the 9 analyzed regions that we will see in the next slide. Number two, that are publicly collaborating with the startups, and therefore they have published somehow either in their websites, media or others, their collaborations. And third, their global ultimate owners, and therefore their parent companies, are headquarters in the analyzed regions. And then the sample number two, we had those 77 interviews that are, on the one hand, a subset of sample number one, but also others that complement and increase the value of the insights of that analysis. Now, focusing on sample number one, here you have the brief summary or list of companies right now that have their parent companies, their global ultimate owners in these regions, headquarters in these regions, and that are publicly working and collaborating with the startups in these regions. As you can see, for instance, Japan with 19, follow with South Korea 17, and others. Just a small comment based on the legend in the left side are categorized by revenue size, in terms of revenue. Now, if we compare this on adoption rate, and here we define adoption rate out of how many of those companies out of the top 20 are already working through any of the corporate venture mechanisms with these startups, we can see this diversity in terms of adoption. Starting from Japan with 99%, followed by South Korea 85%, and then mainland China 65%, Singapore and Hong Kong with 60%, and others, where all of them are above the average of that 56% of the region. Is this low? Is this high? Let's compare it with other regions such as Latin America with 40%, as you can see in the chart, or 90% in the United States. So we are still maybe, what's the message here, I would say? Although there are a diversity on adoption rates across the region, we have room for growth to match other regions across the globe. And what about deep tech? On the one hand, based on the interviews that we have conducted, we see how near 70% of them have corporate venture portfolio, so their collaboration with their startups have some part of deep tech. Precisely around 1/4 of the startups they are working with are deep tech. Moreover, they expect to increase that percentage in 70% of the cases of those companies in the next 5 years, so a growing trend. Moreover, if we see the evolution historically, we see how corporate venture has increased the adoption, which is the red line, and corporate venture in deep tech, which is a subset in the orange line, especially since 2015. And this provides you this emerging trend overview in the region for this field. Now, that connects perfectly with section number 2, which is keeping in mind this emerging growth, what are the challenges those chief innovation officers are facing and tackling? And these were the results. Number 1, technology evaluation. Who should do it? How to do it? Second, the short-term view and internal alignment of KPIs. As you know, deep tech startups may have longer gestation periods, a higher risk, and others. How to manage that expectations across business units, executive committee, corporate venturing teams. Number 3 or 4, things connected with regulation in terms of local regulation, foreign regulation, and others. Sometimes these startups are somehow related with intellectual property. How to manage all of this? Then regional diversity in terms of currencies, languages, and others, and many more, such as the silos between the R&D and the corporate venture teams we will see later, top-down management, risk, and others. Now, how to tackle these challenges? And for this, we're going to cover the 3 main areas we advanced before. Number 1, in terms of innovation governance. And for here, I would say there is one question we can ask ourselves is, how much autonomy or power should we provide to headquarters in terms of corporate venturing teams? So corporate venturing teams, imagine that you have a team in Silicon Valley, another one in Tel Aviv, another one in London. When you want to start collaborating with a startup, who should approve it? Is the local corporate venturing team in London, Tel Aviv, the Valley, or the one in headquarters? And the second one, who has to implement that collaboration? Based on the interviews, we have found 5 different models: optimizer, catalyzer, owner, coordinator, and the hybrid, who combines both of them. We have highlighted 3 of them that are mainly more common somehow in Asia, as you can see, because of the hierarchy and top-down management or innovation approach that you will see in later slides. Now, the second question is how to avoid the bias of maybe the research and development team saying this was not invented here, the so common syndrome. Imagine that you are in the corporate venturing team and you have spot a deep tech startup that can solve a big challenge, but maybe cannibalize or improve or complement an existing technology that have been developed by R&D in the past 7 or 10 years. How to tackle that tension? For this, we have tried to synthesize into 2 questions, which is 1, is the R&D department biased towards A or B? Second, who has the expertise to do that technical evaluation? Is it the corporate venturing team, the R&D, or maybe we have to get one external expert? For this, we have these 6 case scenarios where corporate venturing teams should do it in the first one, let's say in the first column, while depending on the bias of the R&D would be the R&D or the expert, the external expert, to complement and to avoid that bias in the other 3 cases. And this connects with the second section, which is cultural hierarchy. As we can see, as we are going to see in the next 2 slides, there is quite a high diversity in terms of currencies, law frameworks, languages. For instance, in this case, if we try to spot one language that is covered across all regions, it's quite challenging to find one. Moreover, if we see, for instance, in terms of uncertainty avoidance or risk avoidance, also there is quite a high diversity across regions. Also, if we compare not only East and Southeast Asia regions with others such as Latin America, the States, or Europe, also we have different, let's say, themes or ways to do it. And this is relevant when we have to graph or to manage different corporate venturing teams in regions. But also, what about power distance and more connected with hierarchy? We can see here a pattern where the majority of East and Southeast Asia regions, they have high power distance or hierarchical management or innovation approaches. For instance, if we compare with Latin America, the States, or Europe. Is this top-down management approach good? But what are the pros and cons? And this is what we have synthesized in this slide. On the one hand, there are clear advantages such as clarity, speed of implementation, but keep in mind also the disadvantages that this model may have, such as lack of eroding motivation from staff, missing creativity from them, or others, static volatility. What if the top management changes every 2 to 4 years? Now, for the third section of risk perception here, we were asking 2 questions. Question number 1, when you are crafting your corporate venture strategy, what are the right mechanisms to use? Do we have to use a corporate accelerator or a corporate venture capital, a hackathon or a co-working space? What's the right model? And for this, among other variables such as cost, speed, or others, we may suggest to consider also the risk perception that you may come from or have or tackle when you are explaining this model to business units, the executive committee, or others. Now, as you can see in this slide, you have the list of mechanisms with the different risk perceptions according to mechanism. As you can see, there are several differences. And now a second question on this side would be, what if we try to kind of outsource or use what we call a corporate venture enabler, a third party, such as a private incubator, a private investor, a university, a research center, or other to do one of these mechanisms? Although the initial hypothesis was to be quite different, we have seen that are quite similar. So when crafting your corporate venture strategy, try to understand the risk perception that those units may have and try to select those mechanisms not only based on speed, cost, or other variables, but also on the risk perception that you may tackle. Now, okay, Jose Maria, this data is great, but how can I apply this data for tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I would say in these 4 blocks. Number 1, this is happening, this is growing, don't miss the opportunity. Number 2, this is not a one-direction game, but two-direction games, and you can see how different institutions such as Schneider Electric or Cemex Ventures and many others have moved to Asia, their corporate venturing teams or other type of teams, but also how there are different corporate giants in Asia diversifying and locating their corporate venturing teams in other places, such as, for instance, LG, an example that we will see later in the panel discussion. Number 2, design your corporate venturing teams according to this approval, implementation, and be careful or try to have a way to manage R&D correctly, as we discussed before. The region is diverse, so keep in mind that when considering your corporate venturing strategy, and try to mitigate those disadvantages of the top-down management approach. Risk is diverse by mechanism, keep in mind within your strategy, and there is one way to maybe minimize this using sandboxes or doing resource allocation gradually. Finally, the best moment. Now it arrives when you are going to have access to this final report in your phones. Right now, you can get your phones, take a picture, download the QR code, and have access to the results. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, we asked, what's the difference between the gentleman and the lady? The lady, as you can see, although young, has a huge growth potential, and this is the message of today. All corporate giants in East and Southeast Asia, you have a huge opportunity to work with this emerging trend of deep tech entrepreneurs. Join us in the discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose Maria, for sharing the leading-edge research findings with us. Now, if you have just missed out the QR code, or if you wish to share the research paper to your colleagues and friends, stay tuned with the email from HKSTP after this 6-day program. By submitting the online evaluation, you will also receive the online version of the research paper. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a blast today, and we will now come to the final panel discussion to learn insights from the topic, Innovation for Growth, Asian Corporations Innovating with Deep Tech Entrepreneurs. Please join me to welcome our lovely panel speakers. Here in Science Park, we have Mr. Philippe Delorme, Executive Vice President, Energy Management Business, Schneider Electric, who will moderate this session. Ms. Fan Ho, Chief of Staff, Central Asia Pacific General Manager, Hong Kong and Macau, Lenovo. And we are also delighted to invite the following speakers to join us online from overseas. And they are Mr. Jose Maria Ciota, Executive Director, ESA Business School. And Mr. Taejun Park, Managing Director, LG Technology Ventures. Philip, the floor is yours.
Great. Good morning. So hopefully we have a big responsibility because we have a last panel before you guys can go to lunch, so we'll try to be as efficient as possible. Warm welcome to our fellow panelists who are everywhere in the world. So again, my name is Philippe Delorme. I'm the Executive Vice President of Schneider Electric for one of the 2 businesses of Schneider, that's called Energy Management. For the one who are not clear what Schneider is or who Schneider is, so we are a global company. We are an energy technology company. We like to say that our mission is to be the digital partner of our customers for efficiency and sustainability to tackle one of the most pressing challenges in the world, which is climate change. So Schneider was born 180 years ago during the first industrial revolution, so a long time ago. And what kept us alive has been all along innovation and transforming. Now, I think you've been speaking all morning about innovation. If there was one recipe for innovation, that would be too simple. There have been many, many books, and there is no rocket science. There is a lot of experimentation, a lot of sharing, and that's why all of us, we are here today. Now, Jose Maria was talking about one thing, which is connecting the dots. And indeed, there are very few innovations that happen when you don't connect the dots between different parties, different companies, big companies, small companies, corporate ventures. And I think the topic of our panel, which is really exciting, is how can we, and what are the recipes to connect the dots in the most efficient way between large, big companies and smaller companies, and especially corporate ventures. So that's what we're going to do. I guess Jose Maria has been talking about a couple of topics like the governance, how do we prioritize things, how do we manage risk. So we are going to try to go through that. So again, I'd like to introduce Fan Oh from Lenovo. Welcome, Fan.
Thank you.
Tae-Jun Park, who is in the Silicon Valley, a bit far away from us, but very glad to have you on board. And Jose Maria that you have seen before. So let's start maybe with you, Fan. So you represent a very large company, a very successful company that has been pretty good to generate collaboration between Lenovo and startups. Can you give us some example of collaboration that you've been driving and kind of the lesson learned, the challenges and the lesson learned?
Sure, happy to do that. Before I actually talk about the stories, right, I think first and foremost, I really want to actually share with the audience today that at Lenovo, I think for us, really corporate and startup collaboration is really built on a philosophy that needs to be 1 + 1 more than 2, meaning that it needs to be actually synergetic. So therefore, when we actually think about actually the collaboration and also working with smaller companies, I think the first and foremost things that we actually consider would be actually whether it is actually aligned with our overall strategy. And simply put, which is actually 3S, smart IoT, smart infrastructure, and then also smart verticals. And so therefore, with that said, right, so we've been actually constantly actually scouting for opportunities and also working with the startups to actually do two things. Number one is actually to see whether some of these new technology, new ideas can actually enhance our own product. And so therefore, we can actually bring the better solutions and products to our customers. And also vice versa, actually how to groom some of these startups into the next unicorn, right? And so here, let me actually share one of the little stories, right? Not that many people know, but Lenovo has actually been investing in deep tech for many years. And one of the areas that we have actually invested quite a lot of resources on is actually on the smart transportation side. And I think we actually, it's actually on all the news, right? So we invested in this company called NextEV, or the branded name NIO. It's actually listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And it's actually a company that is actually specializing in producing electric vehicles. But this is not the only company that we invested in. We also invested in battery. We actually also invested in the chipsets that is actually used in the smart cars, but also autonomous driving. And what's more, we actually also incubate our own subsidiary company, Lenovo Connect, which actually provides and develops solutions that actually do V2X, so connecting all the vehicles to everything, literally. And so that's actually an ecosystem that we built around it. And we actually believe that in the future, how to actually really have cleaner energy and actually also change how some of the society's consumption of transportation will be actually very critical. Now then, the twist is, okay, for many of the startups, right, hiccup is actually quite possible, right? And it's never actually smooth sailing. And NextEV actually got into a cash flow crunch in 2019. And so therefore, share price has actually tanked to the $1 level. Many of the investors actually were actually trying to segregate themselves. but Lenovo did not. In that very challenging time, we actually hold hands and actually work with Next CV's management. The management is actually very convinced that they really want to polish up their products and their solution further. So they still want to actually heavily invest in their R&D. And so what Lenovo did, we actually opened more doors. We actually helped them to connect more opportunities and actually also help resolve some of the financing challenges. And so after that, 2020, 2021, you can actually check the stock price yourself. So the company actually really get back on feet, right, and get over the hump. So I guess what this story has actually really told us, right, told us all is, I think there are really three things that we should be actually really seriously looking at when we are looking at corporate startup kind of collaboration. And I acronymed it. Start off with S. So it needs to be actually synergetic. Both parties need to actually find the win-win formula. So therefore, that's how we can actually collaborate, how we can actually develop solutions that can actually help out each other. Secondly, E. E actually really stands for the fact that it needs to have an ecosystem. This is really a little bit about hedging the risk, a little bit about how you can actually really connect the dots, and therefore you can actually find more synergies. And lastly, A, avoid interfering the startup. And this is actually the essence of corporate venture, right? That the company itself have the vibrance, have the agility because it have new ideas that they want to implement. You should not actually think of actually having the corporate formula that might actually work on certain situations, certain industry, to actually really cluster it and actually make the startup suffocated. So therefore, even in very challenging times, try to avoid that.
That's a great program. Let's move on. So let's move on to you, Taejun. So you are leading LG Technology Ventures, which is a corporate arm of LG Group. You manage more than 400 millions of funds. So that means a lot of different investment and a lot of different companies and, say, coordination. So talking about governance, that's a lot of complexity to manage. So what's your trick, and what advice would you like to share to make this work for LG?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. LG Technology Ventures is a corporate venture capital arm of LG Group of South Korea. But our team was set up here in Silicon Valley. And interestingly, we have no one in Korea. LG Tech Ventures was set up to make investment in startups of LG's strategic interest. Certainly, one of the most important things for us is to stay up to date on our LG affiliate strategic needs. It will be much easier if we are located in headquarters so that we can easily interact with multiple stakeholders daily basis. But LG made a strategic choice to set up its CVC in Silicon Valley and hire experienced external VCs to lead the effort. So all the investment professionals, including myself, in fact, are fairly new to LG. So we implemented a few mechanisms to make our organization work well internally within LG. So first, we brought in one business development person from each of our affiliate LPs who really knows LG inside out and can navigate a large LG organization to find relevant audience for an identified startup. Secondly, we designated a point of contact at each of our affiliate so that our communication with affiliate can be coordinated. Lastly, we have a quarterly meeting with our LG affiliates to get mutually updated. But more importantly, we do frequent communication daily, weekly basis so that we always stay up to date. Again, as a strategic investor, the most important thing is to understand what is strategic to your corporate customers as their strategic needs could evolve and change time to time.
Great, thank you, Taejun. Let's move on to you, Jose Maria. So you've been talking about a couple principles in your speech before. So if we are back on the governance, according to you, who should decide from where the opportunities are coming from?
Sure. I used to say that it's difficult to know what you may not know, and I explain. On the one hand, as we have seen, we have business units with KPIs that maybe are focused on quarterly financial results, so short-term, medium-term results. Then on the other hand, we have this huge growth potential from deep tech startups. Now, if corporate venturing teams just gather challenges from business units to then find solutions in the market, we may be focusing on the KPIs of the business units and therefore in the short-term, medium-term, let's say, results or horizons. Now, on the other hand, what corporate venturing teams should do is combine this, let's say, pull innovation coming from challenges from business units with push innovation from high growth opportunities that maybe those business units are not considering. In some cases, those business units may not have in mind solutions with artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum computing, but maybe those are technologies and also deep tech startups that can create a growth strategy or disrupt the current markets. Now, the question is, once the company understands that that combination of pull and push strategies should be combined, how to do this change? And I would say, number one is, don't start with the technology, start with the use case or the solution. In other way, try to put in the shoes of the business unit team and try to translate the impact, the quantified impact that that technology may have into the KPIs of that business unit. Later on, after prototyping, you can share the, let's say, the success story internally. Then on the second part is how to do that change of mindset within the organization. And I would say for that, it should be involved not only the top management, but also following in cascade to medium management. So in short, number one, combine this pull and push innovation. And second, don't start with the technology, start with the use case and the challenge.
Great, thank you, Jose Maria. So let's be back to you, Taejun. So Jose Maria was talking about the risk of war or tension between the R&D teams, say the not invented here syndrome inside companies and the outside corporate ventures. So what's your recipe to make it work?
Well, the concept of corporate venturing might be still fairly new to many corporations. And in fact, it takes a long time for an organization to fully understand the concept of open innovation and the value of CVC. Challenges made by internal R&D team on not invented here could be fairly common, especially for newly set up CVC, as organizations' overall understanding on CVC might not be mature enough yet. And it's fair for the R&D team to feel threatened. I think that's a human nature. There is always good argument against not invented here mindset, which is if we don't do it, someone else will do it anyway. That means if we don't invest to hedge our bet, someone else will fund that startup and cannibalize us anyway. How simple is that?
That's pretty
However,
simple.
I wouldn't really recommend any newly set up CVC to confront internally like this from the beginning. I think CVC's job is to make good investment, but at the same time, it's also CVC's homework to increase the organization's overall understanding on the value of open innovation and corporate venturing. As I briefly mentioned earlier, It takes a long time to achieve that. And the best way to achieve that is to constantly prove the value of bringing in external innovation by having quick wins early on. As the organizations thought on CVC gets mature over time, the R&D team will eventually understand that it's not about you versus another, but more about your company's long-term success. So instead of confronting by having a hierarchy war, prove the value. I think that's CVC's responsibility.
That's great. Fan, let's move to you. So we were talking about all these cultural aspects. One of them is more decision making. So can you share with us how you do at Lenovo in terms of governance? Who sits in the famous committees that will decide for the decision and that will, as you said, support, leave autonomy? But what would be your advice here in terms of who should sit in the committees and the decision making?
Sure, happy to share some of the learnings. So at Lenovo, we have the Venture Capital Committee, which is actually made up of members from the venture team first and foremost, right? The GMs, the CFO, the CMO. But more importantly, there are actually VPs and SVP from the Lenovo group, from the different business group that actually sits in that committee. And this is really to really live up to the expectation also for the startups that why is Lenovo investing in me? What value you bring, right? And so really one of the essence is that for these senior executives, the business owners, to actually really leverage and mobilize the Lenovo resources to actually help some of these startups to become successful. And also, these people actually, in the decision making, there are a few things that actually we set forth. It fits with Jose Maria's one of archetype, which is the committee sets forth the strategic objective and also the quantifiable objectives and milestones. That actually then defines what kind of structure that the venture capital should actually adopt, and also what kind of areas that we should be actually looking into investing. And with that, therefore, a lot of the decision making and also alignment can actually be much better coordinated because we set forth for the common goal. It's actually an aligned upon kind of vision. So I mentioned about our 3S strategy. This is really Lenovo's anchor point, right? And then we invest in all the related areas, be it cloud, be it 5G, be it actually talking about edge computing, or actually the artificial intelligence, right? So this is actually really bounded by this group of senior executives. And once this is actually set forth, then everyone can actually observe it from a more rule-based and principle-based point of view, and also really strive for the synergy that I actually highlighted at the beginning, right?
Sure, thank you. Let's move to you, Jose Maria. So you were talking about culture and how culture is important in innovation. So there is an archetype, say, in Asian culture that the type of management is more top-down. Would you see it as an advantage in this, let's say, reach towards creating a bind between corporate ventures and large companies, or is it more an impediment? And what would be the lesson learned here?
Sure, thanks. I would like to start maybe with the case of the tech giant Tencent in mainland China and how they grow their WeChat app. And it's what I think is interesting from that story is that they combine this top-down and bottom-up innovation approach. So on the one hand, when they launched this WeChat app, they follow this more traditional top-down innovation approach because they wanted to provide a clear vision to the audience, to the customers, to the users. But then on the other hand, when they were trying to do more incremental innovation on the existing app, they were starting to combine that with bottom-up suggestions from employees and others. So the first question would be, is this possible to combine in East and Southeast Asia this top-down with bottom-up innovation approach? And the answer is yes. Now, the second question would be, okay, Jose Maria, I would like to combine these two type of approaches. How can I do it? How can I maybe mitigate and boost employee motivation, creativity, and faster approvals? And for that, I may suggest two strategies. Strategy number one, try to transform the organization top down, if that's the current state, and therefore starting with the CEO, either externally or internally. Externally through external experts, and internally leveraging the CEO's inner circle. Later on, that can move down in cascade to medium management that can create that change into the staff. And finally, creating the structures, incentives to secure that that type of innovation happens. One last aspect is there a way to speed up the process of approvals? And two best practices that we have found in the study was, one is securing kind of a shortcut or sponsoring the executive committee that can speed up those type of processes, but also maybe we can have thresholds for decision making. And I provide an example. Let's say that on the one hand, we have a corporate venture team who wants to invest a 20 million investment in a deep tech startup, and then the other one wants to do just a hackathon. For the first one, maybe it should not be involve let's say the upper management, but then on the latter one, so in the first one, yes, on the latter, no, and things like that. So ensure it is possible, and involving the top management for the transformation of the organization should be needed.
Great, thank you. I see time is running, so we're probably going to take one last question and then wrap it up. Maybe a question for all of you, which is, so we've been going through governance, through risks, through a lot of cultural aspects. If you had 30 seconds for the audience, every one of you, what would you say as your biggest recommendation for Asian corporation to start innovating with deep tech startups? Maybe we can start with you in the Silicon Valley. We're going to start from the west to the east.
Sure. I will keep it even less than 30 seconds. Starting yesterday was better than doing it today. So don't wait. Do it right now.
That's good. Fan?
Yeah, so I possibly will need to use up all 30 seconds because I think maybe I use a Chinese for the advice, right? 天時地利人和. So I think for venture capital to work and also corporate startups collaboration to work, particularly in deep tech, right? It needs to actually really rely on the trend, whether the macro trend is actually really something that have the market opportunity there. There needs to be actually the right timing, and I echo with the Silicon Valley speaker here, right? Which is actually now, right? And there's actually so much vibrant activity happening in the economy, and so therefore every corporate should be actually thinking about it. And then lastly, and actually is most importantly, is actually the management team. At the end of the day, in order to actually create a successful business, you actually need to have the management team that is actually have the right acumen, right capability, and also the right mindset.
Thank you. Jose Maria?
My recommendation to chief innovation officers and all the audience in the room would be, if you want to start tomorrow at 9 a.m. working with deep tech startups in the East and Southeast Asia, try to craft a unique and tailored corporate venture strategy, keeping in mind all the corporate venture mechanisms that we have discussed today, and use data rather than intuition to be the architect of that innovation.
Very well said. Thank you very much. So that closes this panel. Hopefully a lot of insights. Personally, the point that I would retain is that there is probably a much bigger downside and risk not to try than to try. So I don't think, we've been going through many topics, understanding it's complicated, but innovation is complicated and there is a big price to that. There are many cultural aspects, governance aspects, soft skills aspects, spanning across culture, but I think probably the biggest point is we have to try and we have to run this risk, and the price can be extremely exciting, so there is no reason not to go there. Thank you very much. Great. So I think now we have a couple questions for you. I'm coming back to my... I think now there is a 15 minutes sort of round table where the question for the group would be, in your industry, how would your business, how would you rank your business? Would you consider yourself as early adopter, as follower, or late in the game? So you will have one facilitator in each of your round circle and 15 minutes to debate on that topic. Good luck. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I will not say that we are the pioneer, but at least I think we are the early adopter in the market comparing with the IT distribution industry. Reason why is because we have been engaging with Science Park since 2 years ago. And actually, we have been working with some of the tech ventures and the park organizations, and we identify the different tech ventures, their different solutions, and then we partner with our resellers and help them to develop the go-to-market strategies and also the go-to-market activities. So in that sense, actually we are helping to deliver and to bring the new solutions into the market. And also in terms of our organization's investment, actually we have built our iLab within our premises, which we have showcasing over 20 different type of vertical solutions, so that we hopefully we can bring all these innovative ideas continue to the market as well.
Great, thank you very much, Riga. And how about over to you, Ivan, over at Astri. How do you see your organization? Early adopters in the game or a little waiting?
Sure, Perry. Obviously, excuse me. We're one of the R&D centers set up by the Hong Kong government, and our mandate is to leverage innovation and technologies to help organizations here in Hong Kong, big or small, to do better in terms of operational efficiencies, customer experience, and so on and so forth, so that they can become more competitive, and Hong Kong will in turn become more competitive. So definitely we're an early adopter, and we're actually a promoter of early adoption of technologies and innovations as well.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you for that, Ivan.
No worries.
Now let's go into another industry, which is insurance. And
Yeah,
share
sure.
with us your thoughts
Yeah,
here.
so basically for Zurich within the insurance industry, definitely I think it's at least an early adopter, because I mean at group level, definitely we have a CVC program. And then also every year, I think starting a few years ago, we have something like an accelerator program or competition every year, which we invite startups to compete, and then there will be a clear winner at group level and also regional level and local level. And then the winner, we will basically have initiative to partner or have a POC with them. And then also locally in Hong Kong, I think we also work with different types of startups for different reasons. So I think the easy part is to improve efficiency or for cost reduction. Of course, we have a lot of solutions, work with startup. That's the easy part. And then also we have worked with startup to try to tap some new markets or doing some innovation. For instance, we work with startup to create new products that tap sort of the Gen Z and new generation. So I think that's overall, I think I would still consider it as an early adopter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your point in terms of you've built in a recognition program to support that, which is very much part of your industry per se. Fred, how about over Microsoft?
Yeah, I think Microsoft we play multiple roles in this innovation, I would say, areas.
First of all, we offer technology or infrastructure to enable technology innovation.
Yes.
So second area is like we adopt technology ourselves. Definitely we are one of the early adopters. For example, AI technology. We actually probably the very first organization to apply AI in our finance management, our internal operations, while providing AI technology enable our startup, our ecosystem partners to use our technology to transform their business. So I think the third area is actually we play a very strong part in the ecosystem, but bring our partner like a biggest company to join go-to-market to capture our, I would say, business part, opportunity to them. So it's multiple part, and definitely we are early adopter in this.
Okay, excellent. And maybe, Patrick, from your side, coming from the chamber, you've got a broad stroke perspective, right, of the chamber members as such. So share your views in terms of this area.
Well, as I mentioned, I have the opportunity to sitting from the other side of the fence, from a corporate world, looking at startup, but also helping startup to communicate with the corporate world. I would say that no, really, the fact is a lot of the corporate is not early adopter for a very simple reason, because when we have a company startup to talk to the corporate world, yeah, you can see that there are a lot of resistance. There's also, that things are not invented here. But it's also that sometimes the R&D team will not be able to understand the strategic needs of the operating partner. But when you talk to the operating partner, they are very focused on the KPIs, means short term. So they're not interested in talking about anything long term, and for the matter, disrupt their status quo. So therefore, I think it is a observation. But I think that if any of our members of the GCC, of the leader of any company, they should be very safely to assume that they are not an early adopter, and therefore it triggered the need for them to set up a right setup.
Yes.
To really go and really establish the right radar. And then to go into the science park places like this to look at the different innovation. And then that person also have to be empowered and have the knowledge of what is really the strategic needs of the company. So this guy can do all the connecting the dots. It could be a very lonely job, but then I think it's a very super important task for the corporate world to move forward in the innovation life cycle.
Right. Well, thank you very much for sharing that insights there. So maybe if each of you could just share one key factor in terms of a takeaway to the audience based upon what we've discussed today, but focusing in on this particular area as such. So, Briga, let's turn it over to you.
All right, so my key takeaway is, I think just a few keywords is just don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
To be innovate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Ivan.
I think recently we've been seeing a lot of trends in terms of the innovations of breaking boundaries. So traditional ecosystems are brought together, and innovations are actually building upon one another to make new technologies and new services that would make even bigger impact. So just one quick example, I think one of the earlier speakers, Duncan, mentioned about blockchain, and he also mentioned about cloud services.
Right.
And imagine all the service providers with hundreds of customers on the cloud services that are connected using blockchain. They can share data, share insights, I shouldn't say data, share insight among themselves. That creates a lot of new opportunities. So I think the key takeaway is that you have to think outside the box and also think from a user perspective, how to solve problems, and then be inclusive.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Ivan. Okay, Arthur?
Yeah, I think just to share some very practical experience about cooperations with startup. I think one key point, I think both from startup side and corporate side, is really to have the right person or assign the right person to handle this, because it really requires a lot of energy and commitment to navigate through the organization and break through all the hurdles. And also I think corporations also need to be aware of the fact that startup are still startup, so you can't apply the same model like you deal with big corporations. So I mean, if corporations are really committed to work with style, I think there needs to be a different governance model to deal with it.
Okay, thanks, Arthur. Fred?
I think one takeaway is like, as a speaker mentioned, use case first and technology second. I do actually speak to many like executives. They say, "Hey, it's the AI, it's the 5G, it's like a blockchain." I won't do that, right? Without defining what is a business problem they want to solve, or societal problem they want to solve. So I think you have to find the use case first and what problem you want to solve, and then look into what technology can match and help you to resolve that issue. I think that's a key takeaway I have for the audience.
Great, thank you very much. And is Patrick the last word?
Well, I think that it's not a statistical proven thing, but if a leader of a company could imagine 50% of the business in the 5 years' time will come from product or service that does not exist today.
Correct.
With that mindset, then I think will be the right things to do is to really re-engineer your innovations, resources, and time, and for that matter, strategy. And I think the net take is that there are actually many ways to go to Rome. No, it would be a shame if you don't deploy a few of them to get the right innovations for your company.
Yes. So the futures today is all about starting with a mindset, and then with that, being able to support and enable them in terms of our capabilities for the future. So I wanted to thank everyone for your time, sharing of your comments as such, and I look forward to the next few days if you're enjoying the conference here, and I'm sure the audience who's in this hybrid telecast also appreciate your comments. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.